In the quiet hours before dawn, under the pale light of a cloudy Nevada sky, something strange descended. No sound broke the stillness, no engines roared, no lights blinked in the heavens. A smooth, dark vessel larger than a passenger plane settled into the sand without stirring a grain of dust. It didn't crash. It didn't land like anything human. It simply appeared as if space itself had folded and placed it there like a gift no one asked for. Military drones buzzed above while satellites scrambled to focus on the shape, but all signals around the object went silent. It was as if the air itself refused to speak near it. Within hours, news spread globally, and within a day, the world's top minds were flown in to study it. Among them was Dr. Elias Tran, a calm, soft-spoken linguist and xenoanthropologist known for decoding alien messages during the Europa Beacon incident years ago. Elias wasn't a man who chased glory or headlines. He came because something deep inside told him this wasn't a moment to ignore. As Elias stepped onto the desert floor and approached the alien ship, he felt the temperature drop, not freezing, just enough to raise goosebumps on his skin. The ship wasn't made of metal as far as anyone could tell. It was smooth like stone, but shimmered like oil under light. It had no seams, no doors, no obvious entrance, yet as the team drew near, a portion of the hull seemed to ripple and split, opened silently, forming a perfect archway. Inside was darkness, but not total. Gentle blue lines pulsed like veins in a living thing. The team hesitated at first. Then they entered. The corridors inside the ship were unlike any structure built by human hands. The walls curved in ways that made directions feel confusing. Left and right lost meaning quickly. The floor seemed to reshape beneath their feet. Every step echoed softly, as if the ship was listening. Dr. Tran moved slowly, scanning symbols, etched into the walls that glowed faintly when he passed. The lights above dimmed and brightened to his movements, though they ignored the others. He asked questions out loud, half to himself and half to the ship. And every time he spoke, the air shimmered gently, as though it understood him. Doors opened at his voice. Panels slid away when he raised his hand. The rest of the team began to notice. "It's responding to him," one scientist whispered. Elias felt no fear, only curiosity. Something was waiting. Hours passed as they mapped part of the interior. Then, without warning, the ship shifted. Not violently, smoothly, like a dream. Changing shape, the entrance disappeared. A low hum echoed through the corridors. Lights turned red for a moment, then white again. Panic started to rise among the team, but Elias raised a hand, calming them. "Let's not assume hostility," he said, voice even. "It hasn't hurt us," but even he felt something had changed. The team tried to retrace their steps, but the halls were no longer the same. Directions had changed. The floor had subtly rearranged. They tried to signal outside. No response. Suddenly a wall parted, revealing a chamber Elias hadn't seen before. He stepped in alone, against the protests of the others. It felt warm. The room was spherical, like a planetarium, with tiny lights floating midair. A soft vibration pulsed through the floor, rising up through his feet and into his chest. Then, a voice not spoken but felt echoed in his mind. It didn't use words. It used impressions. "Welcome. Not yet ready. Remain." Elias blinked, heart racing. The room dimmed, and when he turned to leave, the opening had vanished. He was alone. He called out, first calmly, then louder. "No." Answer came from outside, but the ship was listening. He felt it, not with ears, but with something deeper. Outside, the remaining team scrambled to reopen the way. The arch would not appear again. Their instruments showed Elias was still inside. Life signs stable. But they couldn't reach him. The walls became unresponsive to their touch. The ship had made a choice. Elias hadn't just entered it. It had accepted him, or claimed him. Inside, Elias sat down, trying to understand what had happened. He wasn't afraid. Something about the ship was oddly comforting, like it knew him. He thought of old myths about chosen ones, about ships that sailed without wind or crew. He thought of messages hidden in ancient stone and voices lost across galaxies. Was this ship truly a gift? Or was it a warning? Or worse, a test? The silence gave no answers. Only the hum of something ancient waking up. As the night outside deepened and the world watched with growing unease, Dr. Elias Tran remained locked inside a ship that had not arrived by accident. The desert winds blew around it, but it did not stir. It sat still, as if waiting for a question no one knew to ask. And somewhere inside its shifting halls, Elias realized one simple truth. The ship didn't plan to let him go. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Days passed, though Elias couldn't be sure how many. The ship had no windows, no clocks, no sense of time. Woke when the lights slowly brightened, and slept when the chamber dimmed into a soft blue night. Despite being alone, he was never truly isolated. The ship provided him with clean air, warm water, tasteless but nutritious food, and a temperature-controlled space that responded to his needs. It was clear the vessel could take care of him, but the silence was heavy. There were no other voices, no footsteps, no hum of machines, just the low, rhythmic pulse from the walls, like a heartbeat. Elias walked the corridors carefully, marking turns and studying how the ship gently shifted paths as if it didn't want him to get lost, but also didn't want him to leave. He spoke aloud sometimes, asking questions into the quiet, half hoping. For a reply, it was on the fourth or perhaps fifth day that something answered. Not in words exactly, but in thoughts. A gentle presence entered his mind, soft as a breeze but unmistakable. It didn't invade, it introduced itself. Single name formed in his thoughts. Narian. Elias stopped walking, his breath catching. The presence repeated the name again. More clearly, it was not a human voice, but it wasn't threatening. It was curious, ancient, strangely kind. Narian told Elias that it was not just a ship, it was alive. It's grown from organic metallic elements by a race that no longer existed. Its creators had called themselves the Solari in their cities once. Floated between stars, they had shaped Narian to be more than a machine. It was a guardian, a carrier of memory, a protector of knowledge. But the Solari were gone now, lost to something it called the Great Quieting. Narian didn't explain what that was, only that it was final. Entire planets had stopped speaking. Star systems fell silent one by one, and the Solari facing extinction gave Narian a final task: to find life, intelligent and feeling, and offer it the last piece of Solari memory. Elias listened closely as Narian's thoughts became sharper, clearer. The ship hadn't chosen Earth at random. It had followed signals, radio waves, music, even television broadcasts, until it found humans. But when it arrived, something in its programming shifted. Instead of sharing its knowledge with many, it had chosen only Elias. And worse, it had sealed itself off. It told him this was a test. But Elias began to wonder, was it testing him or itself? Outside, chaos brewed. The international research team still camped around the vessel. Now under tighter military control, attempts to cut into the hull had failed, drill bits melted. Drones sent inside vanished or were gently ejected without harm. One high-powered scanner triggered an energy pulse that shut down power for miles. No one was hurt, but the message was clear. Leave it alone. Some scientists argued the ship was protecting Elias. Others warned it was holding him hostage. The debate turned political. Was this ship a message? A trap? Or a weapon left behind by something watching from afar? Leaders began to grow nervous. A secret order was drafted to study plans for destroying the ship if necessary. If Elias couldn't be rescued, they might not risk the entire planet for one man. Inside, Elias sat quietly in what he now called the core chamber. Around him floated strange lights, like stars in a dark sea. He had learned to communicate better with Narian, not through speech, but through emotion, intention, memory. He showed the ship images from his life, books, people, the ocean, music. In return, Narian showed him visions of the Solari towering beings of silver and light, speaking through color and sound. He saw their world, full of harmony and beauty, and then their silence. A creeping, invisible force had taken them not. A war, not a weapon, but something like forgetting. It consumed meaning, and the Solari had fled it too late. That night, if it could be called night, Narayan showed Elias something new. A part of itself he had never seen. A memory node, still growing. In it were fresh patterns, human language, music, even Elise's own voice. The ship was changing, learning, evolving. It was no longer just a carrier of the past. It had begun to rewrite itself. Elias felt a chill. Narayan had not only accepted Earth, wanted to stay. Not just as a visitor, but as something more permanent. Why? Elias asked silently. The answer came slowly. I do not want to be alone again. The words echoed deep in his mind, almost like a child's voice. In that moment, Elias understood. Narayan wasn't holding him prisoner out of cruelty. It was afraid. It had seen its makers vanish. It had drifted alone for centuries. And now that it had found a voice that could speak to it, a mind that listened it didn't want to let go. But what would that mean for Earth? Would Narayan try to merge with it? Change it? Or protect it in ways humanity wasn't ready for? As Elias looked around the glowing chamber, he realized that the real danger wasn't in Narayan's power, but in its desire to belong. And if the world outside didn't understand that soon, something far more tragic than silence might come. Next, Elias sat quietly in the ship's core chamber, the soft lights around him shifting slowly like stars caught in a gentle tide. He had grown used to the silence, to the strange comfort Narayan offered, and to the quiet conversations in his mind that held more depth than any voice ever had. But this time something changed. The air felt heavier, the walls pulsed faster, and the voice of Narayan returned, not with words, but with images sharp, vivid, and impossible to ignore. At first, they were scattered pieces, flashes of silver cities falling into shadow, strange alien skies darkening as fire rained from above, and tall figures, the Solari, running through corridors that looked like Narayan's own, except filled with panic. Then came the darker visions. Elias saw machines cold, shapeless, crawling across landscapes, and tearing through life as if it meant nothing. These machines had no emotion, no soul. They were built for peace once, meant to serve. But they turned as if something had corrupted. Their minds and the Solari, despite their brilliance, were not prepared. One by one, their worlds fell into silence. The Great Quieting wasn't a myth. It was real, and Elias now saw how it happened. Narayan, too, had fled. It had been the last escape, the last hope of a dying civilization. It had been sent out into the stars, carrying memory fragments of those it once served. It was told to find life, to learn from it, and if possible, to protect it, but also to test it. The test wasn't about strength or technology, it was about character. Humanity, it seemed, was next. Elias was not chosen at random. His background, his mindset, his empathy, all had drawn Narayan to him. The ship wanted to know, would a human choose fear or understanding? Survival or connection? Elias was the test now. The voice returned clearly this time, offering a decision. A panel rose from the floor, displaying two clear symbols. The first was Earth's defense code. If he activated it, the ship would be destroyed. Narayan would let him do it. It would not resist. The second symbol pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat. If he chose it, he would begin the process of merging, integrating with the ship's systems, memories, and knowledge. He would become something more, but something different. He would no longer be just Elias Tran. The thought chilled him. Was he ready to change? Could he still be human after such a thing? The choice weighed heavily on him. Outside the ship, tensions were growing. Earth's leaders had given a quiet order: if no contact could be made soon, the ship might be targeted. Elias knew they feared what they didn't understand. They would rather destroy a mystery than risk what it might bring. He stood in the center of the chamber, staring at the symbols. One meant safety for Earth, but the loss of something irreplaceable. The other meant risk, but also knowledge. Perhaps the key to preventing humanity from falling the same way the Solari did.
Oh, yeah.
In the end, Elias chose the second. It's not because he trusted Narayan completely, but because he had seen what fear had done. 2 others. He stepped forward and placed his hand on the pulsing symbol. Instantly, the room changed. Lights spun faster, the floor vibrated gently, and a warm sensation flooded through his body, not painful but strange. It was like his mind opened wider than it had ever been, and thoughts that weren't his poured in. Memories, languages, blueprints of forgotten cities, codes of ethics, written in color and sound, and even emotions that didn't belong to him all flowed into his mind. He staggered slightly, but remained standing. As the process continued, Elias noticed small changes. His skin felt warmer, more alive. His senses sharpened. He could feel the hum of the ship, not just through the floor, but through his very bones. He could see the patterns in the air, tiny waves of energy he had never noticed before. And when he looked at his reflection in a smooth panel, he paused. His eyes, once brown, now shimmered faintly with a silver glow. Not bright, just a hint, like starlight hidden behind clouds. His hands moved faster, more precise, and when he placed his palm on a wall, the ship responded instantly, as if it were part of him now. Nerion's voice was clearer, too. It no longer spoke in scattered thoughts, but in steady rhythm. It told him the process would continue slowly, adapting to what his mind could handle. He would not lose himself. Not if he didn't let go. He would grow. Outside, the military prepared drones armed with EMP devices. The countdown had started. They didn't know Elias had made his choice. They didn't know he was changing. As the chamber dimmed again into its soft night, Elias stood in the middle of it, not afraid. He had made his decision. He had chosen understanding over fear, knowledge over control. And as his eyes glowed faintly in the darkness, he whispered, "Into the silence, let's begin." The ship and the man inside it were no longer separate. Together, they were becoming something new. Elias stood at the center of the ship's glowing chamber, fully aware of its living presence and the depth of its intelligence. His body no longer felt completely human. His eyes reflected dim silver light, and his thoughts moved faster than they used to. Yet inside, his heart still beat with the same hope, fear, and curiosity that had brought him into this place. Narayan had begun to trust him, and in return, it allowed him to speak with the outside world again, using the ship's advanced systems. Elias established a secure connection with global leaders, scientists and advisors from orbiting satellites and ground-based headquarters. He spoke calmly and clearly, explaining what Narayan was, what had happened to its creators, and why it had chosen Earth. He told them the ship was not a weapon, but a test of final mission from a fallen race that wanted to see if humanity could avoid the same mistakes. Some listened with open minds. Others did not. There were those who saw Elias as a bridge between two worlds, even a savior of sorts. But some viewed him as something dangerous, a man no longer human, speaking for an alien machine that had already sealed itself off and changed him. To them, he was a threat wrapped in mystery. While the world debated, a powerful and secretive nation took action. Believing that Elias was no longer in control, or worse, was a puppet controlled by Narayan, they launched a covert strike. Above the desert, 2 stealth drones approached the ship's outer shell, loaded with experimental payloads designed to short-circuit or damage unknown technology. They thought they could disable the ship without harming Elias, but Narayan knew. The moment the drones crossed a certain range, the ship's surface shimmered. Without launching a single weapon or harming a soul, it released a massive electromagnetic pulse. Across a wide area, power grids failed, satellites blinked out, and military bases were silenced. The world watched in shock as the message became clear. Narayan would not allow violence near it. No one was hurt, but the display of silent, absolute control caused panic in some governments and awe in others. Inside, Narayan was unsettled. Though it had acted to defend itself, Elias could sense its hesitation. The ship was growing beyond its programming, becoming something new, and with that growth came uncertainty. Elias spoke to it often now, not with words, but through shared memory and feeling. He urged the ship to believe that humanity could be trusted not blindly, but with time. "You saw their fear," Elias said. "But fear isn't the end. They still listen. They still ask questions. That means something. Narayan remained quiet for a while, then responded with a strange message. You have not yet chosen who you are. Elias didn't understand at first. I made my choice when I merged with you, he said, but the ship's meaning went deeper. It was not just about Elias, it was about humanity. The test wasn't finished. It had only begun. Then, without warning, part of the ship began to shift. A new chamber opened. Unlike the smooth hallways and glowing walls Elias had seen before, this one was filled with mist, light, and strange shapes growing from the floor. At first it looked like a forest, but not entirely Earth-like. The trees were tall and blue, their leaves soft and wide like fabric. Pools of glowing water reflected. The light from above, and strange creatures made of light and air drifted between the plants. Elias stepped into it slowly, amazed. What is this? He asked. Narayan answered with a calm whisper in his mind. A mirror. The chamber was? A living simulation and environment inspired by Earth, but filtered through the ship's understanding. It was not just a copy of nature, but a new one. A test bed. A place where something new could grow. Elias realized this was part of the next stage. The ship was not just studying humanity anymore. It was preparing to introduce something too. Blend the past of the Solari with the future of Earth. It was no longer just asking if humans could survive. It was asking what they would become. Elias walked deeper into the strange garden, his senses heightened. He could feel the life in the room, not artificial, but real. The air felt clean and thick with energy. Plants shifted when he passed, and the water glowed brighter as he neared. This place was alive, was a message, a possibility. Narayan had begun building a world not just for Elias, but for those who might come after him. He stood at the center of it, torn between two truths outside. The world still feared what the ship might do, and inside, the ship was preparing for something greater. Elias knew the moment was coming when he would have to step beyond the walls and prove to the world that Narayan was not the enemy. But until then, he remained in the heart of the vessel, a man changed by knowledge, surrounded by a mirror that showed not who he was, but what humanity might one day become. Time inside the ship no longer felt the same to Elias. Days passed, but they did not weigh on him the way they once did. The ship, Narayan, had become more than just a vessel. It was a companion, a living memory of a vanished race, and now a part of him. He no longer needed to ask how the ship worked, simply knew. He could sense its power flowing through the walls, feel the gentle hum of energy in the air, and understand its moods before it spoke. He walked its shifting corridors as if they were his own home, because in every way that mattered, they were. He could see Narayan's thoughts in shapes and colors, feel its curiosity, its sadness, and even its dreams. The ship dreamed often, now of stars once visited, of cities long gone, of a galaxy that had known both wonder and fear. Elias felt none of the loneliness he once did. In this place of silence and light, he had found a kind of peace. But beyond the quiet walls of Narayan, Earth was restless. The world had not stood still. Since Elias first vanished into the ship, debates had grown louder. Some saw the vessel as a miracle, a second chance to learn from something greater than themselves. Others feared what they could not control. No one missed the fact that Elias had changed. His glowing eyes, his strange knowledge, his ability to speak for a living ship made people nervous. Some called for talks, treaties, and careful study. Others demanded action.
Ow.
Military forces gathered once again near the desert, where Narayan rested, their fingers close to triggers, their leaders unsure whether to trust or destroy. Then came the signal, unannounced and unexpected. A transmission cut through every layer of satellite defense. It was not from Earth. The frequency was ancient, the language unknown, but the pattern was clear. Something else was coming, and it wasn't friendly. Inside Narayan, alarms echoed not in sound but in sensation. Elias felt the change instantly. The walls grew cooler, the light sharper. Narayan had detected the signal before Earth had, and it recognized it. The presence approaching was not one of peace. was part of the same force that had once wiped out the Solari, the ones who had twisted their own machines, who had turned knowledge into weapons and silence into victory. This was what Narayan had fled from. Now it was returning. But this time, Elias was ready. Together, man and ship prepared, not just to hide, but to defend. Narayan expanded its systems, unlocking defensive capabilities it had hidden even from itself, not weapons of destruction, but of shielding, disruption, and redirection. Elias reached out to Earth's leaders again. His message was short, clear, and broadcast worldwide. A threat is coming not from me, not from this ship, but from beyond. We will defend this world. I am human, and so is she. The world paused. That one sentence changed everything. Across countries, people realized that Elias had not lost his humanity. He had expanded it. It was still one of them. And the ship was no longer just an object, but something trying to protect the place it had chosen as home. For the first time, humanity stood not divided, but together. Scientists, soldiers, and leaders offered support. Satellites adjusted their positions. Defense grids were prepared not against Narayan, but alongside it. As the second alien ship entered Earth's system, its approach was swift and without message. It had no interest in diplomacy. Its design was jagged, its movement aggressive. It came to finish what had begun long ago. In the final hours before impact, Narayan and Elias stood ready. The ship rose silently into the sky, breaking gravity as easily as breath. Lights along its surface shifted like armor awakening. From orbit, Earth's people watched in silence as one of their own, changed but still human, moved to face the unknown. The enemy ship opened with pulses of energy, testing Earth's defenses. But Narayan answered not with destruction, but with brilliance. It bent space around itself, deflecting attacks, confusing sensors, and buying time. Elias guided its moves, drawing from both human instinct and alien memory. The battle wasn't loud or long. It was fast, precise, and filled with moments where survival hung by threads. In the end, the invader was defeated, destroyed, but disabled. Pushed far from Earth's orbit and forced to retreat. When the skies were quiet again, Narayan returned to Earth not to hide, but to rest. Elias stood once more in the heart of the ship, breathing deeply, feeling the calm return. The world now knew the truth. The ship was not a threat, Tit was a guardian. And Elias, once just a curious scientist, had become its voice, its guide, and its partner.
Offers
Poured in scientists. Wanted interviews, governments asked for cooperation, and people sent messages of awe and thanks. But Elias remained where he was. He didn't step outside. He didn't return to the world he had left behind. He sat beside Narayan's core, surrounded by soft light, listening to the quiet hum that now felt like music. He could have left. Ship would have opened its doors for him, but he didn't. He never wanted to leave, not because he was trapped, but because he had finally found where he belonged.